Chapter 1. The Cave. You're standing in a cave in the Pamir Mountains of Tajikistan. Soviet geologists found it in 1972. They were surveying for mineral deposits, and their drill bit broke through into a cavern 1,400 meters down. The air was stale, the walls were smooth, and on one of those walls, about 10 meters from the entrance point, was writing. Cuneiform. Sumerian cuneiform, not influenced by it, not similar to it, actual Sumerian script, carved into the rock with a precision that suggested tools, not erosion. The geologists took photographs. They noted the coordinates. They sealed the shaft. And they filed a report that went straight to the Soviet Academy of Sciences in Moscow. That report was classified. It stayed classified for 48 years, until 2020, when a researcher at the University of Tübingen in Germany was digitizing old Soviet geological surveys and found the attached photographs. One photograph showed the script. Another showed the cave wall itself, which wasn't just rock. It was layered with selenite and fluorite crystals. In total darkness, those crystals emit a faint glow. The Sumerians, in their texts, described a place called the Kur, the underworld, the land of the dead. They described it as eternal darkness broken by luminous stones. That's a poetic description. But here, in Tajikistan, 1,400 meters underground, is a physical cave with luminous stones on the walls and Sumerian writing. Why was it there? The Sumerians were in Mesopotamia. That's Iraq. This cave is in Central Asia, 3,000 kilometers apart. No trade routes connected them at that time. No known migration patterns. So how did the writing get there? The researcher compared the symbols to known Sumerian tablets. It wasn't just random signs. It was a specific phrase, a phrase found on a tablet from the city of Ur, dated to around 2400 BCE. The phrase translates to, "The door is sealed, the path is forgotten." That's ominous. But on the Ur tablet, it's part of a ritual text about burying a temple after its deity had abandoned it. In the cave, it's alone. Just that phrase, repeated 3 times. And next to it, a symbol that doesn't appear in any other Sumerian context. It looks like a spiral with a straight line through it. The researcher published a paper in 2021. He suggested it could be a later carving, maybe from a traveler who knew Sumerian script, but that didn't fit. The carving style matched early Sumerian tools, bronze chisels, not iron, not steel, bronze. And the cave had been sealed by natural rockfall until the drill broke through. No evidence of later entry. So the carving was old as the Sumerian civilization itself. That raises a question. What path were they sealing? And why would they seal a door 3,000 kilometers from home? Chapter 2. The Tablet. So you have a cave. You have Sumerian writing, and you have a phrase. The door is sealed, the path is forgotten. That phrase is the link. Because it's not unique to the cave, it's on a tablet. Tablet number K.8537 in the British Museum. Found at Ur in the 1920s. Translated by Dr. Samuel Noah Cromer in 1967. It's part of a longer text called The Lament for the Abandoned Temple. The text describes the ritual closing of a temple after its god has left. The priests would seal the doors, recite this phrase, and then break the ceremonial tools. Standard procedure, but the tablet from Ur contains a second section. A section most translations omit. It's a list of places, not cities, not temples, directions. astronomical alignments, and at the end of that list, a single line. From the place of the luminous stones, the path leads east, to the mountains where the earth meets the sky. Luminous stones. That's what the Sumerians called the glowing minerals in their underworld description. And the cave in Tajikistan has those exact minerals on its walls. So this isn't just a poetic phrase anymore. It's a possible set of instructions, a path. But a path to what? And why east? Mesopotamia is west of Central Asia, so going east from Mesopotamia takes you toward Iran, Afghanistan, and eventually the Pamir Mountains. The same mountains where the cave was found. That's a 3,000-kilometer journey, on foot in the Bronze Age. Impossible? Maybe not. A 2019 study in the journal Nature Communications analyzed ancient DNA from skeletons found in the Central Asian steppe. The study found a genetic shift around 2400 BCE. A new population appears, and their genetic markers show ancestry from somewhere south, not Europe, not Siberia, the Near East. Specifically, the region that includes Mesopotamia. The date matches the peak of Sumerian civilization, the date of the tablet, and the probable date of the cave carving based on tool marks. So there was a movement of people, a migration, but not a documented one. Sumerian records don't talk about large groups moving east. They talk about wars with neighbors, trade with the Indus Valley, but not colonizing mountains 3,000 kilometers away. So who were these people, and why did they leave? The answer might be in the weather. Paleoclimate data from lake sediments in the region shows a massive drought hit Mesopotamia around 2200 BCE. It lasted for centuries. It's called the 4.2 kilo-year event. Entire cities were abandoned. Populations collapsed. But that's 200 years after our date. 200 years is a long time, unless the migration started earlier. A gradual push, a search for water, a search for a new place. But why go that far? And why go into a mountain and carve a warning on the wall? This is where the symbol comes back. The spiral with the line, the one next to the phrase, in the cave. That symbol isn't Sumerian, but it appears somewhere else, 7,000 kilometers away, in Peru, on the Gate of the Sun at Tiwanaku, carved around 500 CE. A spiral with a line, a much later date, a completely different continent, no possible connection, unless it's not a cultural symbol, unless it's a map. A team from Stanford's archaeology department looked at it in 2022. They weren't studying Sumeria. They were studying ancient navigation symbols. They proposed the spiral could represent a vortex, a whirlpool. The line through it could be a path crossing it, a dangerous crossing, a point of no return. And if you superimpose the symbol's orientation from the cave in Tajikistan over a map of the region, the line points northeast, toward a specific pass in the Pamirs, a pass that leads to the Tarim Basin, a basin that, by 2000 BCE, was populated by people with European and Near Eastern ancestry. The Tocharians. Their language is an Indo-European language, but their earliest mummies, found in the Taklamakan Desert, show textiles with weaving patterns that match Mesopotamian styles from 1,000 years earlier. So you have a genetic link, a possible route, a symbol that might be a guide, and a cave that marks the start or the end of that path. But here's the real question. Why seal the door? Why call it a forgotten path? You don't forget a path you're actively using. You forget a path you're trying to erase. Chapter 3, the silence. So you have a path, you have a migration, you have a warning carved into a cave 3,000 kilometers from home. The evidence lines up. Genetics, archaeology, climatology. It all points to a real journey, a real door. But then you hit the silence. The Soviet report from 1972 was classified. Why? It wasn't a military site. It wasn't a strategic resource. It was a cave with old writing. But here's what wasn't in the public photographs. The original Soviet field notes mention something else. A second chamber, past the carved wall. A chamber the geologists only glimpsed with their lamps before their air supply alarms went off. They noted a drop in temperature and a sound, a low hum. They assumed it was wind through a fissure. They sealed the shaft and left. Their supervisor, a man named Arkady Petrov, filed the report, and then he wrote a personal addendum, an addendum that wasn't declassified in 2020. It was found in 2022 in a private archive in Moscow. A historian named Irina Volkov was researching Soviet geological surveys and found Petrov's diary. The entry for June 15th, 1972. It reads, "The script is a warning. The sound is not wind. It is mechanical, like a millstone turning deep in the earth. We are not the first to find this. The Germans were here in 1938. The Germans. The Nazi Ahnenerbe expedition. In 1938, an SS unit, led by an archaeologist named Ernst Schaffer, did indeed survey the Pamir Mountains. Officially, they were studying Aryan origins. But Schaffer's own field reports, captured after the war, mention a sealed cave system in the coordinates near the Soviet Vind. He writes, "The locals will not approach it. They call it the door to the ancient ones. We attempted excavation, but were forced back by bad air." Schaffer took samples, rock samples. Those samples were sent to Berlin. They were lost in the bombing. But the analysis request survived. It requested a test for unusual isotopic ratios, isotopes. That's a nuclear term. In 1938. So the cave was known, and it was interesting enough for the Nazis to look at it, and interesting enough for the Soviets to bury the report. That's two separate regimes, ideologically opposed, both deciding this cave was better off forgotten. That's not conspiracy. That's pattern. Now look at the present. The researcher from Tübingen who published the paper in 2021. He was denied funding for a follow-up expedition, officially due to budget cuts. Unofficially, the Tajik government cited geological instability. The cave is in a remote border region. Access is controlled. The door is still sealed, not by the Sumerians, by us. So we're left with the original carving. The door is sealed. The path is forgotten. We've found the path. We've traced the migration. We've heard the second-hand account of a sound in the dark. But the door itself remains shut, not by accident, by a sequence of deliberate choices across 80 years. Choices made by people who saw something and decided not to look further. That's the real mystery, not the symbols, not the genetics, the consistency of the silence. Why does this specific cave, this specific story, keep getting filed away? You have a Bronze Age people carving a warning at the start of a long journey. You have a genetic trail that says they made that journey. You have a symbol that might have guided them. And you have every modern entity that finds the place immediately closing the file. That's the pattern. The path is forgotten because we keep choosing to forget it. The door is sealed because we keep choosing to seal it. And maybe that was the original warning all along, not a statement, an instruction.